What's that sweep?
Yeah,
So, Mr. Raamayan, you're back from Burning Man,
I am.
and this was your first time there.
It was.
And how was it?
It was absolute and utter madness. Beautiful, wild human madness.
Hmm.
But, it also gives me so much hope for humanity. It really does. I'm, um, I really, like I said, I think you would have loved it so much because it's not like an organized thing. Burning Man creates a container with a set of principles. And based on those principles, its ethos and intention, everybody has their own cap. So they're just given a certain amount of square footage in a desert in this big ring. And they have to create their own caps, their own fundraising, their own everything to bring infrastructure down there to create a portal for a human experience for any facet or any flavor of the human experience they wish to put, as long as it aligns with those core guidelines and principles, including the spirit of the gift, which means that you can't have commerce there. So everything that you bring and all the experiences, food, drinks, whatever you want to bring, it's in a gift. You have to gift it. And so people pay to be there to create experiences to gift to others, which is so beautiful in many ways. Like that's such a core essence of the creative, generous human experience where we're all co-creating individually as part of a collective, expressing any facet of our creativity that we wish to, or our wackiness or our sexuality or our anything. And people get a real opportunity to break out of their shell, of their perspectives, like your lenses, right? People are always wearing, lenses, and they're wearing lenses so long they forget they're wearing lenses. And then you get to Burning Man, you're given a burner name. Nobody cares about your name. You get out of your regular avatar, you wear whatever costumes you want, kind of like you're already doing in life, but everybody's doing it. People are coming out there and they're being like, I'm going to just have my own name. I'm not going to ask each other what we do. We're just going to be a whatever expression of this moment avatar of ourself is and interact through that. So the freedom and permission that people have to be their true selves, or true selves, but they're expressed moment to moment self, at least, even if it's not true self, is fucking beautiful. And the social stratification is so little there, where it's everybody. You don't know whether someone's a millionaire or a billionaire, or so you don't cares. It's about your shared humanity, and there's so few places, actually, any places in the world where that is actually the lived reality, that it's really special. It's special for a lot of reasons. And I think we can learn so much from that as a society. And, also just seeing like how human coordination can happen if the right incentives are there. And it's interesting to witness the incentives at Burning Man because it's nonprofit. Nobody's making money. The incentives are experience generation. The experience, the upside, or the sacred reciprocity that they're getting has nothing to do with money. And I think this reframes value creation in a huge way. And if that is the peak experience of our culture right now, and that's outside of commerce, I think that should say a lot and speak a lot to what really motivates human beings. Um, so there's a lot there that I'm taking and I'm still unpacking from. And, we have our first Burning Man camp that wants to be a DAO using our platform, which is super cool because the way they're organizing is like, again, it's not for profit. It's people are all putting money in, being like they're members of this thing and wanting to collectively collaborate on an output and an experience. What a perfect mechanism to use something like a DAO for, you know. Um, so really cool arisings, and I'm really happy I went overall.
So how does that affect value creation if you're outside of commerce and then they're going to create a DAO? What is the mechanism, or what's the prime reference point? Is it just we're a camp of people, we're all artists, we love creating together, and now we want a container to try to do something in commerce? Is that
Outside of commerce,
outside of commerce?
it's almost like patronage, right? When you were an artist and you got a big patronage, you weren't doing it to make money. You were doing it to express a facet of human creativity.
Right.
And the output wasn't necessarily the generation of more capital. The output was a generation of culture. And people would give into that. And that's what you see at Burning Man. Like people who have wealth are like, here's $1 million, go create something fucking awesome because it contributes to culture. So
Mm.
it's a patronage culture in a different way. but it's not an individual now, it's a collective that's able to work together and collaborate using those resources to generate an experience that may have an impact on the collective.
But is this the camp? Are they still doing it within the context of Burning Man, or this is
Yeah,
outside of Burning Man
it's
afterwards and in between?
it's within the context of Burning Man. But I mean,
Oh,
people
okay.
prepare all year for Burning Man, right? It's the whole, you're building sculptures, you're building art, you're building stuff, you're planning, you're coordinating, and Burning Man is the zenith of when the experience actually happens.
So could all the camps of Burning Man kind of use the same methodology? Like, sounds very unique
Yeah, I mean,
because
in
it's
theory,
actually outside the commerce system, which I think fundamentally you want, but then the whole exchange of value is so different.
it is different.
Hmm.
It's interesting. It's kind of like an interesting bridge. Like you need money still. I mean, Burning Man, about $1 billion goes into Burning Man every year.
Somebody's making some money. Who's the one putting it on?
Someone's making some money, right? So that's what I'm saying. It's not like non-commercial in the sense where people are buying a lot of shit to bring there to give away. So you're taking like the products of capitalism and then having experiences to give away. And it's not a systemic solution to anything in that sense. It's just a fascinating social experiment.
Mm. Mm. So I was going through the documents, and I got something fundamental that I hadn't got before around what voltage was in terms of having a wallet associated with an NFT.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the, the wealth creation is built into the blockchain and the documentation of what the NFT is.
Yeah.
Is that essentially what voltage is?
Yeah, I mean, voltage has a couple of aspects to it. One is it's codifying agreements inside of the NFT. So your NFT is now an agreement. If it's a piece of art, then it's an agreement of how that piece of art's used, or its licenses. If it's a piece of real estate, it's the agreement on the ownership of that real estate. If it's any asset, really, the NFT is just a demarcation of ownership. And the wallet inside the NFT can now collect revenues and collect tokens and can be a storage mechanism for the value generated by that object.
So it's like a mini bank for its own
Exactly.
function.
Yes, that's exactly it.
And that's because I saw that little video you made where you very succinctly said what that was and the impact. What was that show? Or was that a podcast, or what? That looked like
Yeah.
something.
Which podcast? I've been on a number of them.
I don't know, the one I just shared. It looks like there's a background. You're sitting on a bit of a stool, and you're giving about a 2-minute download as to what we just talked
Oh,
about.
yeah, that was the video recording I did in Costa Rica.
Okay. Da, 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 da. Okay, Johnny, let's bring out the next guest. Okay, so there's something I wanted to talk about. I mean, essentially what I was supposed to do, right? And I think I got something which I don't know if you'll agree with me on this one, but remember Jimmy's database data morph?
Vaguely.
The big thing about what he had is he had an interface where you could put together any two informational objects without being a programmer. So basically, it was the way the mind worked. It would just, you could link any two objects in front of you, and that would create a database link behind. So later on, you could access it through these different links. So I was thinking about, I think one of the problems that you and I had in terms of, again, like what's the community, what's a DAO, what's a nexus, what's like, because essentially, if we look at different scales of objects, like if you just everything's an object, or let's say everything's a community, like what constitutes a community and what constitutes the creation of a community. And I was looking at the map and looking at, and there was just a few things that I thought were missing, because what happened was, remember, I don't know if you've seen, if you
You're gonna have to turn your background off, otherwise it'll be hard for me to see any of that.
yeah, just wait a sec. Show my ghetto basement background. Yeah, you look real nice there, Schweepums. Can't even get my freaking mouse to this freaking screen, the freaking frick.
Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
dun, 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 dun.
Nope. Nope.
This video's off. Oh, it's back on.
No,
You got to go into settings.
yeah, I freaking know what the freaking. Okay, this is gonna
Oh, the
blur.
background's not the problem. It's the blur. There you go.
Okay. So do you remember these maps? So if you look at communities in the middle, then you have the
Yes, community's relationship to an individual behavior.
and then a community's relationship to an individual in a world, then a community's relationship to the teams within it, then the community's relationship to other communities.
94.9.
Yes, definitely.
Right? Who's that?
Zoom in.
Zoob. Guyver.
Gone.
Okay. So what I was looking at, for because I think what happens for me is I'm always looking at a language layer that's missing in terms of when going through a process or categories or something like that.
Mhm.
So to me, this map is very important because it's the relationship to the team, it's a relationship to the communities, it's a relationship to the individual, and a relationship to the inner world, which is never kind of put out.
Mhm.
And so if you put that as the breakdown
Mhm.
of whatever the DAO is or
Mhm.
whatever the community is,
Mhm.
so then I had
That's a good map.
all these maps
Yeah.
that I'd made, I don't know, 3 years ago, 4 years ago at
Mhm.
different levels. And then I started looking at it from the point of view of, let's say, the DAO took out my sort of shared knowledge community, specific, and
Mhm.
then thought, okay, DAOs. And then I started looking just at communities in general and going, okay, what's the, because it's almost the same thing in a sense, right?
Mhm.
Like a DAO may start as a small thing for an individual or a team, but essentially it's an autonomous organization. It's turning into a community.
Mhm.
So then you and we were speaking about products and products
Mhm.
being the center point, let's say, for creating a community, but that's not the only thing. So because you've got your ship, and then you've
Mhm.
got um your fleet,
Mhm.
but using the same framework again, right?
Mhm.
And then you've got your port. Now this would be the physical location, right? The other
Yeah.
two are more abstracts based upon the product, but the port is now getting into something physical.
Mhm.
This is the relationship to those such as the physical community. And then you're talking about the guild, right?
Mhm.
Now the guild to me is like
Are those all the same map?
yeah, same
Got
map.
it. Got it.
So, but again, we're changing the reference point of what the actual, let's say, DAO or community is, right?
Mhm.
Because if you have one product, it's just, let's say the card set, it's based around the card set, just the card set. Now, if
Yep.
you have the fleet and you have the card set and you have the software program and Bob's thing over here and Sue's thing over here, now you're combining products into some sort of integrated network. That's a
Mhm.
different thing, but an expansion of what you're talking about, right?
Mhm.
Now, but if you had a port, and let's say a community says, okay, in San Francisco, they go, okay, we're going to do it because of physical location.
Mhm.
We still want to do it, but we're basing the reference point on our physical location. So it's a different kind of type, right?
Yeah, but
Now,
those are, I think those are types. I think what you were speaking about, which is useful, is just the relationship of the hierarchies. It's kind of like you always had, inner group, outer group, inner individual, inner group, outer group, right?
yeah.
And I have been using that reference point a lot, even in the architecture, where it's like, what are the one-on-one communications? All about the direct messaging and the messaging systems. What is the group field? Okay, that you have to create a projects portal for each group where each micro community has their own relationality with each other. And that requires a very specific type of interaction, knowing other members, knowing gift skills matrix, having things like Caravan. All those things are in the group space, right? The community space I find really interesting because, I've been really debating on that one because exactly like you said, the reference point of this DAO is the product or project becomes the community. And in many senses, that is the way it's happened. Pretty much every project that's launched has built a community around that project, because communities, the way we're speaking about them, are not like abstract, just human communities. They're, groups of people with a purpose, right? And I think that the fact that you have a purpose creates a definition for that community. Where unlike Reddit, I mean, Reddit may just have an r/whatever name, and it may not have a defined purpose. The purpose just may be an abstract community group just talking about things. That's not what we're building in terms of the DAO. So we were always in this like, do we start with projects? Do we start with communities? Communities is the biggest container that can contain multiple projects. But I'm like, unless you start a project and are able to build something around a project, your community is an abstract concept in a sense.
Yeah.
So it's like community arises out of dharmically dedicated people on a successful project, orienting people around a mission. So in that context, you just start with the project, and the project becomes the community as it builds integrity. And then the project can launch other sub-projects underneath it, which essentially creates the hierarchy naturally.
Yeah. Well, and
It's kind of where we
I bring the point back to Jim Townsend's Datamorph, where depending on, let's say, the type that you start with, you can still build the other ones, but all of them can kind of connect to all of them in a sense.
Yeah,
But
they have to.
but there's some distinct, I know that sounds maybe a bit silly, but I want to just keep going with what I got here, because there was
Sure.
4 more communities that I thought were missing that kind of came through. So now the guild, let's just say for a moment that the guild is the most able to be anything. At some point, a bacon guild, or you could, you could base it upon jobs, you could base it upon so many different things, but the guild is almost like at some point people are going to want to build an infrastructure, right? That's using the DAO methodology, and they don't want to build a product. They don't want to build they want to maybe gather the people. Maybe the guild is just gathering the people together, and then you build your products or whatever it is, right? But I think each one of these is going to have a different building process based upon the nature of exactly what it is. So I just want to add 4 more that may seem a little strange, but I think are still at the same level in different ways. And one was adding the concept of a base. So now it's not a port, now it's a base, which is more almost like wanting to create a base in the forest, wanting to create something new rather than something that already exists. Okay.
So at what level of the ontology are you trying to create a categorization system? I'm just really curious.
This is at types of DAO, like this I
Okay,
think
so this is at types of DAOs, not like DAO. Okay.
And then having the same layer underneath, which creates, a real nice structure to then go into the process of going into this. But if you don't, like, this is that language layer, like if you look at your thing in the Miro,
yeah,
you have a few of these, right? But then you're going into the process of it. And what this is adding is, okay, you can go into the process of it, but here's 5 processes, and each one is unique, but needs to be part of this. So that's part of what I'm trying to share here. Okay, so one thing was philosophy, that people may want to build a community or DAO based upon an actual philosophy, and that almost might be one of the highest categories in a sense, right? But you might want to create a Christian DAO, you might want to create a Jewish DAO, you might want to create a Muslim DAO, or you might want to create a anarchist DAO, or you might want to create a solar punk DAO, whatever. Maybe they're by worldview, or maybe they're just, again, somebody comes up with a new philosophy and goes, okay, just like maybe a joke philosophy might be stupid, but some leader or some visionary has some idea, and they might have manifesto or whatever it is that it is. But again, it's a different starting point, and within the philosophy, then you could create products or guilds or have other things as subcategories, but they almost all can be subcategories in a sense. So let me just add in a couple more. Pause. So old forest, right? I mean, I was thinking for Planetary Guardians, right? Every cause out there needs its own web TV show, but every cause out there needs its own DAO. You want to say something?
Oh. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, we're freezing a bit, I guess.
Yeah.
Did you get the cause thing?
Nope.
No.
I lost you for the last minute, basically.
Okay. So basically what I was saying was another type of DAO or community would be based upon causes. So like the old growth forest or the dolphins or basically any issue that we're facing. When I was on Planetary Guardians, you need a web TV show, but then you could also have a DAO for each thing, right? Which would really expand how you work together. Are you still there?
Of the structure, the nature of the structure is, you know, hierarchies of DAOs, right? A DAO is just a concept, like you're saying. Like, no, it's not like a concept. A DAO is a design where a group of people have a mechanism to vote and earn together on a blockchain.
Mm,
That's it.
mm,
That's really all it is. So I love what you're saying because you're saying that, hey, those are the basic principles, but how each one unpacks and unfolds has its own design architecture that become essentially templates. And what are the most important templates for the design architecture of the most important things, like a guild or a project? Or they may have very different needs, requirements, design, understandings, architectures, flows that all need their own layer and understanding. So mapping out the most important ones is and creating the substructures for them is as important as creating a master structure.
yeah.
Is
It is
that what I'm understanding you're saying?
Yeah, it is the master structure. But
It is.
because the inflow parts, there is a kind of master structure in
Yeah.
terms of certain layers, right? Where we're
Yeah.
identifying all the right relationships.
Yeah. And it's perfect because all this is all a series of relationships. Like that's all really it is what it comes down to. And technology is enabling behaviors, but behaviors are happening in the context of relationships.
Mm,
So without understanding those and creating the map around the relationships, then you're going to be missing the whole, half the entire puzzle.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so then one last piece, which again might seem a little strange to people, is events. Because you could look at Burning Man, right? I mean, that's an
Mm-hmm.
event. I mean, you could create a festival when you have an event
Mm-hmm.
that it has a start and a stop, and it's again, it's different from the other ones. But
Mm-hmm.
this one with the guild kind of can represent anything, right? Like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
cycles of event reactions and
Mm-hmm.
conversations take place. That's the basis of the whole inflow, right? Of a
Mm-hmm.
very that's the basic simplistic thing that we reproduce over time. So these eight will create a like, and again, looking at you at marketing at eight, the number eight, there's eight of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's sort of what I came up with in terms of now the shared knowledge community can be built from this of maybe having each one as a multiple guild, and the shared knowledge community is a meta information connector between the guilds, as you know, that has a very specific
Yeah, that's
thing.
thank you for saying that because in my mind, when I hear shared knowledge community, that's exactly what I think. It's the master guild that's sharing all of the knowledge. All of the knowledge pooled by every DAO and all of its learning should live in a shared knowledge community. It should live in a master DAO that's free and accessible to all users. Like
Mm,
to me, that's a shared knowledge community. It's a, you know, and I think this is the biggest missing thing in companies and corporations because the nature of it is competitive. You're incentivized to hoard information, especially around your process. And so you only have companies like Deloitte or like, Price, whatever, that go into companies and sell process to them for a lot of money, a lot of money. I mean,
mm,
what you're doing in Inflow, if you decided to go to like Deloitte or whatever, like you would just, it'd be insane,
yeah,
right? But like here, the incentive is to share process because by sharing process, there's a collective learning and a growth to such a degree where there's a mutual feedback relationship of benefit. And that is the thesis of the mycelial cooperative economic. And I think that's going to be one of the major behavioral changes in the DAO is how effectively we can share knowledge in a community. And the idea of having a shared knowledge community in itself, having a DAO that's not like a Wikipedia, but is really a shared knowledge community where it's just paying a group of people to be the knowledge aggregators and the synthesizers to be able to provide value back to the collective. It becomes almost a mirror, right?
yep. And I think if we're again looking at the larger, we have to deal with these larger issues. We need that type of multidisciplinary focuses and integrations between the different normal silos to deal with these economic problems that that are going to get worse and worse because that old system's about to die, right? And
Mhm.
new system hasn't been built yet. And I think what we're doing here is, I think it's pretty close to what we're both kind of aiming at in a sense, because
Definitely.
I think what happened, or like I was, my design is a very fixed design
Hmm.
at
Hmm.
some point, right?
Hmm.
And it can be arbitrary, but there have been certain decisions around, okay, this is what it is, versus the nexus or the DAO, or whatever, of you going, okay, we'll build the structure that could be anything, because you don't want to
Hmm.
just fix people in a fixed design. You want to give them the creative ability to create whatever they want, any type of organizational structure. It could be way better than the shared knowledge community, but to have both.
Hmm.
And now this is kind of like an in between of being able to to have a straight DAO the way you want, but here's some templates of specifics. And
Exactly.
then these templates can be brought together to create the shared knowledge community, because it's going to take a lot of infrastructure building
Exactly.
everywhere to really build
Exactly.
that layer.
That's 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 an organism,
Yeah.
right? The organism intelligence is so much better than mine or yours, and it
Yeah.
always will be. And we get to build the architecture that can harvest that in a meaningful way. We're creating a new possibility for an experiment that can happen. And what your thing is, 144, 12 people in each team, like that's a configuration. There's no reason why in this architecture you can't just spool up that configuration immediately. It gives you all the possibilities. And if
Yeah.
you, through your experimentation, unveil that that configuration is the best configuration, then it will, by its own natural consequence of evolution, be the best. And if it's not, a better one will arise.
Yeah.
Like
Well, I mean, better one would desire. Why do I see something from The Simpsons? We didn't quite make the good one, but we got to this one.
yeah,
So,
I was listening to Daniel Schmachtenberger and Kevin Owaki. I'm gonna send you these two podcasts.
mhm.
He's the founder of Gitcoin, which I think is one of the most successful DAOs, and one that is, he wrote a book called The Green Pill. It's such a good book. I mean, this guy's truly a Kevin Owaki. Shout him out for being a real deep thinker and designer of how to create regenerative impact into DAOs and how to account for externalities. And so he had a conversation with Daniel Schmachtenberger about, and they're unfolding this, having a 4-part conversation around the kind of existential risk of, you know, how do you design in externalities into your system? You're you're basically creating a whole new set of technologies, and every time a new set of technologies have been created, there's been unwitting externalities that happen. Like when Facebook designed itself, I didn't think it was going to help like undermine U.S. democracy, like, but its ad algorithms inadvertently did that and had so many unintended consequences because of the incentive modeling around its design. And so I think we have to be really careful as well by looking at the design and saying, hey, we're building all of these things that have the potential to liberate, but there may be unintended consequences that may uh, enable certain behaviors that could make things way worse. So
Well,
how do we have a coherent exploration of that, you know as part of our process?
and I think that's where the values come in, or and truly looking at
Yeah.
how do we live them, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
have to have humility in terms of, if we are upgrading our system, we better have humility along the way,
Yeah.
be able to take back feedback. And I think that the big difference is, I think the people that we interact with are generally, they're looking for goodness. They're looking to create a new system that's good for the people. And I think that the old paradigm is based upon, a bunch of shysters and corruption, and the people that are designing to screw people. So I think there's a huge difference between those types of people. And
There are, but it's more like the technology. For example, you build NFTs and you have certain people that are using them to create really meaningful projects, but that technology and the ease of blockchain enabled so much grift, right? Um, or DeFi, right? On one level, you're decentralizing finance and cutting out the middleman. On another level, you can design it in such a way that really uh, is like a Ponzi system, right? And so, like every technology that's developed has a potential to be used in a way that doesn't serve the collective. And I
sure.
think if we have a process, for example, like rug pulling, right? Rug pulling is when, somebody funds a project and it goes into the DAO, right? And you have one master controller of that wallet and they can take it all out and run, even though the collective funded it. That happened a lot in crypto.
Huh.
So, you know, blockchain's great. And You also, the anonymity of blockchain can be a problem because you don't know who these people are and they can run away at any time. So, okay,
What?
you may have to look at the anonymity benefit of blockchain, and you also may have to look at social benefit of making sure that the community knows who each other are. And maybe if you're creating a project, you have to have some sort of identity. So you can't rug pull people. But that also means, wow, we're now ascribing to a way of identity that has its own externalities. Like these are interesting things that when you're designing a system, I feel you have to look at what the trade-offs are for any choice you make, because it may have unintended consequences, both positive and negative, and doing enough train out of that to see, okay, well, ahead of time, we're making that risk rather than we're running in blind, which happens most times,
Right.
you know?
Well, I mean, you've been experimenting a lot, right? I mean, you're spending a lot of
Mm-hmm.
time in this new arena, and it is pioneering work. I mean, it's, I mean, I think we have to do a lot of testing.
Yeah,
I think we
agreed.
have to do a lot of testing and not be so quick to be that first into
The
the
answer.
market kind of attitude, because
Exactly.
I think it's more important to get it done right, because this is
Well,
a lot more complex than just one tech getting that first
yep,
place, like Twitter or something, right?
that's the right response, bro. That's exactly how I feel. And how to do that in a way where you get the onboarding of your community so you have the funds to be able to take a little bit longer but do things right, and the balance of first mover advantage, which is really a hyper competitive viewpoint, versus, hey, you were systems designers here, we're going deep to build the new civilization architecture, and those who want to come on board should know that.
Did you did you see that book the book cover I sent you on
I did.
the AI, the Chinese Silicon Valley? Have you seen that book or heard of it?
Never.
It was written in 2018, and it's like, I don't know much about the Chinese AI market, but this guy was set up a venture capitalist firm, and he's
Mm-hmm.
very knowledgeable, and I would suggest reading the book, because it essentially, what we're creating is an AI. I think it's more of a human centered AI, and I think we have to look at it as an artificial intelligence, because the amount of data that's going to be created, and the type of, like, the future is AI. Like, as electricity was the future when it came in, we're leaving from the discovering about the electricity into now a hell of a lot of people around the planet figuring out how electricity works and how it's going to work in different engines or everywhere, right? The same thing's happening in AI, but China is like way ahead,
Yeah.
because they're so data driven, and they, that one app that had all the Chinese doing everything within one app, and the amount of data that was created. AI is basically fueled by data for its feedback mechanisms and understanding, how it works. So
Absolutely. And that's why we say data is the new oil. It really is.
yeah.
It truly is, because if what you're saying is true, and it is, then the most valuable thing is data in the world.
And so the categories of how we collect the data and what we do with the data, and again, all the information flows, right? I mean, that's essentially, what I've been playing with. So it's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's just fascinating to read the book and get the background on the relationship between the American way of doing business and the Chinese way of doing business, and
Yeah.
how now they're coming together in two different forms as an AI. And China's getting, they're getting huge amounts of venture capital, huge amounts of support from the government, huge amounts of they what he made this great metaphor. I don't know if it's a metaphor, but when Sputnik got the Americans all into space programs, when the AI computer beat their best Go player, 230 million Chinese all of a sudden got into AI. And it was a massive thing in China, and nobody even heard of it, North America. But just the mentality of the Chinese people, and the mentality of the Chinese government, and they are putting tons of funds into AI. And I'm just thinking from a point of view raising funds, that I haven't seen AI as a term that you use to describe what you're doing. And I was just thinking that, at least for what the inflow matrix is, I mean, it is an AI.
You know what I like to say? I like to say that if you're living in the natural way, then you can drop the A. Because intelligence creates intelligence. It's natural. There's a natural process of fractality. Fractality is natural. The upgrade. You're speaking. I love this upgrade humility, because to upgrade or to create self-similar versions of ourselves, which we're trying to do through metaverse, is natural. Those are natural processes, practical processes of being alive. If you have that humility, then it doesn't become A, because you're not separated from the whole. And if you're not separated from the whole, you're just going to build intelligence that serves the whole. So I think our goal should be to drop the A.
Mm. Or bring in something which is more human centered, kind of like, because I see us as nodes, like you're a node, I'm a node, and we're creating methodologies, processes, and software to connect us
Mhm.
in some way that's, I think, a lot more advanced than is in current social media and software programs.
I agree. But when I think about artificial, artificial literally means not natural.
Mm.
But if you are operating from the natural place in service to the good of the whole, creating architectures in whatever form, whether it's pranic or whether it's zeros and ones, your intelligence creating intelligence. There's or maybe even call it natural intelligence, right? Because,
Mm.
how do we return back to nature, even in technology? Like,
Mm.
technology is not separate from nature. Where do you think every single part in this computer comes from? It's hers, and it's going to go back to her. The
Mm.
same laptop, the same phone, it's going to go back to her. Even if it takes 100,000 years, it's going back to her. It's nature. Right? We're just creating a form. And I feel it becomes artificial when humans are separate from nature. It becomes artificial when we don't consider the whole as part of it. It becomes artificial, when we're abstracting from her. And I just think, even as a mimetic, this is worth talking about,
Mm.
you know, because we then think of AI as something really scary. We think of it as
Mm.
scary because it's embedded in a rivalrous dynamic of those who are disconnected from the whole.
Mm.
You know,
Well, I mean, the amount of media about the bad aim of artificial intelligence. So I think you're right. I think it needs to be reframed. It needs to
yeah,
be
I
reframed
think
into
so.
something positive and good for the people. Kind of like,
It does.
the Star Trek computer, right? I mean,
Yeah, man.
Roddenberry had a much different viewpoint of computers and how they helped us. And
Exactly. And that's why I don't use it, just to really, in response to your question. It's kind of my response to that, and
uh,
where I think the reframe needs to happen in a meaningful way in order to bring that in.
okay, so yeah, I know natural intelligence or some new term. I like that because there needs to be something different from artificial intelligence. It has a bad rap, and it is a bad rap, I think.
Yeah, it is a bad rap, you know. In your system, I mean, the beautiful thing of why I am constantly coming back here, besides the fact that I love you, is because you've designed it according to natural principles. You've studied natural principles. You looked at spiral dynamics. You studied the nature of how nature operates. Even that communication relationship map, you're looking at the natural flow of connection. And you're looking at, how do you optimize what's natural? How do we use what's here, what we've been given, to optimize the naturalness to a point where we can actually, in a more self-similar way to nature, coordinate our human activities and behavior?
Mm.
Is that artificial intelligence anymore? No, I don't think so. Which is why I'm here, you know?
Well, today I did 7 readings, and I'm using these maps, to do them. And I mean, you take 6 values and you configure them. They're all great values. And, it's a very, it's funny because I wonder if they're each an NFT in themselves, because they're creating a very unique configuration.
Mhm.
And each person, is drawing out of it something very unique to them in their situation. And again, I will never get another reading like I got today. Each one of them is very different, and each one of them is teaching huge things in each reading. Like, I mean, it's, we're if you're always playing with values, and you're playing with value formulas, and you're playing with value configurations, and you're placing on sacred geometry, there's something beautiful you start to see in terms of, it's again another language level that we're not kind of playing with as yet. I think the mystery schools play with it, but
Mhm.
hopefully these tools can get other people to play in it. So
Yeah, no, I'd love to figure out um, how we use these tools in the platform. I think it's going to be a really beautiful exploration for me and you to look at.
mm,
It's like, how does every DAO basically get a toolkit? What does that look like? Like, what does it look like for that to actually happen? What is the way that these tools are used to connect DAOs? Or what are the meta operational frameworks, like these 4 levels that we use, that always connects in and out for what the system is? I think those are things we should explore for sure.
Mm. Okay, so what's it? Do you feel what I showed you was kind of what you were looking for? It is, I mean, we haven't broken it down into the next level processes, but I think this adds something in which I think maybe.
Well, I think part of what I was looking for is, um, is kind of this ontological reflection and looking at the structure that I have and seeing what's there and what's missing, which I think part of this conversation was. I think there's other levels to that, of course. The other thing is looking at how do I create a good visual. Can you get this software? It's called Visme, Visme.
Okay.
Can you take a look and see if it's useful? It's a diagramming and it turns all of your diagrams into interactive, dynamic, moving. Like I can see the influence. I keep killing it with Visme. I'll give you some examples. But take a look because I think what I'm looking for is your support in dialing some of the structure now that we're building into the visual geometrical structure you build all your other inflow maps in, kind of thing.
Okay.
It's like
Okay.
inflowing these maps a bit in a way. Like
Okay.
even that way that you did with like the product team and the processes and that one in those circles, and you looked at the processes for each one coming in and then splitting and there's a way that you visually map that's just awesome. So I think it'd be really useful to go into, what parts of the system need best to be mapped and to see if you're open for helping with that. And I think by doing that, it'll also just bring so much coherence and connection with the inflow just by doing it, just by your mind flowing through it.
Right. Okay, yeah, I just taking a quick look at it. Looks, maybe what I can do is put that map in that you just said as a starting point, because that is the beginning of the starting point, and then we can start to add in um the part that I just brought in, and then begin to use that as the next level. Then you can start to add in the processes for each one of those.
Well, it's like that map, that HR map of the DAO, which was like join as an individual, join as a fleet, join as a crew, join as a like. Is there any? I'm just wondering if there's any feedback you have. I'd love your feedback on that map because that's one that I feel like could be represented way better than it's being represented there in terms of the
Well,
steps and stages. And like, if we decide that those are the ontologies, how you would do that in a map of like what it would look like, and then a ship, and then a crew, like you're like, I'm just really curious for how you do it or how you visually lay it out as an artist. You're an artist.
okay. Well, yeah, I think I was sort of waiting for your buy-in into what I just shared with you because I wanted
Yeah.
to add some more pieces. And then if you're okay with that, because because I know this is a very important time, right? I mean, you're formatting the main structure for what you
Yes.
have. So this
Yeah.
is this is key and the
This
timing.
is key. Like this is the moment.
Yeah.
And I'm
So
super grateful we're here in this moment having these conversations. And again, like I'll just iterate this one more time. It's like when you take some of this and flow it through your intelligence and it comes out, like if you take a map that I did, but flow it through yours and make it yours, like I've done to yours 1,000 times. I'm just
right,
really curious to see what will happen,
right.
and I love, if that could be kind of a next step.
Okay. I'm about to go to Saskatchewan where I'm gonna have an office set up that is gonna be more, I'm not really in a good setup right now for that.
Yeah.
I've been sort of testing outside stuff, having a bit of a vacation.
Yeah.
But I feel like we're close now, and I think Saskatchewan's beckoning. And we also have to work on the course design. I was really like I met someone here who's been doing almost a reading a day, and she's very supportive of the work, and she's having, I guess, breakthroughs. I mean, like it's really affecting her, and so that's really helping me because you got to teach someone. I can't just keep coming up with stuff out of
Mhm.
without feedback from people. I've been isolated so long, so I'm looking forward to go to Saskatchewan, and I think that's where I can jump in and really not get distracted and have enough walls and spend the time to dive because this is a big dive in, right? So yeah, I'm excited to do it because I think this is it. I think this is we're getting to the point of
We are. And we're going to
mutual.
launch. You're going to be, you're also one of our beta creators. Like we're going to, invest in the project and in tokens. We're going to build guilds around your product. Like we're going to help bring it to market. Like your team, if we're bringing on beta creators, you're like chief fucking data creator here, which is perfect.
Yeah.
You get to analyze the whole process from both sides.
I want this. I want that. No, it's exciting. It's really exciting. Bum bum. Was there anything else that we need to chat about?
I mean, I think at some point it'd be good to just do a little share screen. Maybe next meeting we can just do a little share screen on some of the Miro stuff, so we can just get a little more granular about what we're mapping or what you're taking through Visme. Maybe until then, just look at Visme and play around with it, build your own stuff with it, see how it goes and flows. And if it is the tool, if it's not, then move on.
Okay.
And then maybe later this week we can just go through the Miro board and be like, yeah, this makes sense to flow this through a map, see what's missing, and then create design specs, more like a design specs combo, so we can really feel aligned, so we don't have to go through more iterative cycles, and then
Okay.
move into creation of the map when you're grounded and landed in Saskatchewan.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, I'll just end this right now.
Okay.
Thanks for anyone watching. It's beautiful to share with the world what we're doing. And
Absolutely.
we'll probably see you next week.